Good morning, Mr. Pretorius. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Chair.
Thank you.
Today, Ms. Barbara Hogan will be led by Advocate Mokoena.
Thank you. Before, Mr. Mokoena, before you do that, I just want to attend to one matter that I want to deal with, and basically it relates to the media statement that the Commission issued on Thursday. I want to read this media statement again and make an appeal to the public and to the media to please respect the processes of the Commission and to abide by the law. The statement reads, since the commencement of the public hearings of the Commission in August 2018, various sections of the media have disseminated and published contents of witnesses' statements submitted to the Commission in connection with the inquiry of the Commission before the witnesses give evidence before the Commission and without the written permission of the chairperson. The latest incident relates to the statement submitted to the Commission by Minister Pravin Gordan, Minister of Public Enterprises. The same thing also happened with the statement submitted to the Commission by former Minister of Public Enterprises, Ms. Barbara Hogan. Both Minister Gordan and Ms. Hogan are yet to give evidence before the Commission. An investigation is to be conducted to try and establish the people responsible for the leaks of witnesses' statements. However, in the meantime, I wish to draw the attention of all media houses and the public to the provisions of regulations 11.3 and 12.2c of the regulations governing the Commission. Regulation 11.3 reads as follows, and I quote, no person shall, without the written permission of the chairperson, A, disseminate any document submitted to the Commission by any person in connection with the inquiry, or publish the contents or any portion of the contents of such document, or peruse, that is B, peruse any document, including any statement which is destined to be submitted to the chairperson, or intercept such document while it is being taken or forwarded to the chairperson, close quote. Regulation 12.2c reads, and I quote, any person who contravenes a provision of Regulation 11, which includes the regulation I've just read, is guilty of an offense and liable on conviction, Roman figure 2, in the case of an offense referred to in paragraph B or C, to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 12 months, close quotations. Paragraph 3 of the media statement reads, and 4, these regulations make it clear that it is a criminal offense for anyone, and that includes the media, to disseminate or publish, excuse me, without the written permission of the chairperson, any document which includes witnesses' statements submitted to the Commission by any person in connection with the Commission's inquiry. 4, after a witness has given evidence in public before the Commission and his or her statement has been handed up at the public hearing, the media may publish his or her statement or portions thereof unless the chairperson orders otherwise. 5, I urge the media and everyone to observe Regulation 11.3 and desist from disseminating or publishing witnesses' statements or portions thereof before the witnesses have given evidence at a hearing of the Commission, unless the chairperson's written permission has been obtained. I therefore trust that in support of the work of the Commission, all media houses, journalists, commentators, analysts, and the public at large will not act in breach of the regulations and will show respect for the processes of the Commission. Close quotes. I just want to appeal to the media and the public again to say, in support of the work of this Commission, please just exercise patience. We are not saying that you are not going to be allowed to publish these statements. I am giving permission, I have given permission that once the witnesses have given evidence, you may publish the statements. I just want to point out that when witnesses have given their statements to the Commission, those statements are still the subject of investigation within the Commission before the witnesses give their evidence. The legal team looks at the statements, looks at issues that are covered in the statements, and may themselves or through the investigators of the Commission seek to check certain things and discuss the statement with the witness in regard to anything that they might have picked up in terms of checking certain things covered by the statement. So in terms of public interest, I do not think that there is really any special public interest that dictates that they should be published before the witnesses give evidence. Whatever they say in the statements, it means it has been taken care of and will be published and be made known to the public. It's just a matter of time. It is not that it's going to be swept under the carpet, and therefore that's why it's necessary for the media to publish it ahead of the witness giving evidence. So I really appeal to all concerned to just exercise patience and give the processes of the Commission space so that we can do our job properly. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Mkwena.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, a question may be posed as to where does one locate the evidence of Ms. Hogan with reference to the Commission's terms of reference. Ms. Hogan's evidence addresses the term of reference 1.1 to the extent that it deals with the undue influence made to members of national executive in the appointment of boards and or the CEOs of the SOEs. She will also deal with how she was removed as a Minister of Public Enterprises. The testimony of Ms. Hogan will also lay the basis, Mr. Chair, for the evidence which the Commission intends leading in relation to the SOEs, such as Eskom, Transnet, DINEL, SABC, and SAA. It might include also other SOEs which fell under her portfolio. Apparent from her statement, she will also testify on these terms of reference with specific reference to Transnet, Eskom, and SAFCOL. She will proceed, Mr. Chair, to also testify on the issue relating to the termination of SAA route from SA to Mumbai. She will also refer and corroborate the evidence of Ms. Mento in relation to the rumors of her removal as the Minister of Public Enterprise. You will see that her evidence in a way dovetails with the period which Ms. Mento have testified upon pertaining to when she visited the Gupta compound and when an offer was made to her. Initially, Mr. Chair, you will recall that Ms. Hogan, through the assistance of his legal team, did finish the commission with her written witness statement. It was around August 2018. And upon perusal of the statement, we arrived as the legal team at the conclusion that the statement only implicated one person, and it was the ex-president, Mr. Zuma. A notice in terms of Rule 3.3 was then dispatched to the ex-president as early as the 22nd of August 2018. The commission did not receive any applications in terms of Rule 3.4 or any version from the ex-president. And subsequent to that, Mr. Chair.
And in terms of actual receipt by him or his legal team of the notice, that is not an issue. They did receive it.
They did receive both statements according to the records of the commission. There's no issue around that, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And subsequently, Ms. Hogan, having filed the initial statement, she then supplemented the same statement and attached comprehensive annexures to the statement in order to ventilate the issues which were paramount or which were appearing in the first statement. So there's no any change of the version. The version is still the same. The second statement simply supplemented the initial statement, and it was also delivered to the commission on the 8th of October 2018. In her supplemented statement, Mr. Chair, Ms. Hogan mentions a number of individuals and organizations, and this raised a similar debate like the one of Ms. Lynn Brown, whether a mere mentioning of a person can be equated to that person being implicated within a proper interpretation of Rule 3.3. However, to err on the side of caution, as the legal team, we did issue further notices in terms of Rule 3.3 to all individuals, institutions, organizations, and parties that were mentioned. The DS has since lapsed, and no person or party or organization has applied to cross-examine Ms. Hogan, save for two affidavits that were received from Mr. Maroja and the other one from Mr. Manyi, where they simply clarified certain portions of Ms. Hogan's statement, which will deal with them in due course, but none of them have actually made any formal application in order to cross-examine Ms. Hogan. Ms. Hogan, Mr. Chair, is represented by Harris Nupen Mulibatsi attorneys, and I'm informed that Mr. Harris and Mr. Macheta are in attendance on behalf of Ms. Hogan. Mr. Chair, for ease of reference, we have also prepared a bundle containing Ms. Hogan's witness statement and annexures. We propose that that bundle be marked as Exhibit L1. Ms. Hogan's witness
Is that the one written file 2 of 2?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are two files. Both of them, we may have to mark them L1, but we'll refer to them as File 1 and File 2 of Exhibit L1.
Okay. two files relating to Ms. Hogan's evidence will be Exhibit L. You said L, eh?
L.
Yeah, Exhibit
L1.
L. And the one which contains her statement will be referred to as Exhibit L, File 1.
Yes.
And the one which contains only annexures will be referred to
Yes.
as File 2 of Exhibit L.
Yes. Mr. Chair, for completeness, there are other parties and individuals that are represented in these proceedings. They are here to listen to the evidence of Ms. Hogan, and I'm aware that Transnet, that is being represented by Mr. Motau, and I'm also told that the SACP is having also its legal representative to also listen to the evidence of Ms. Hogan in these proceedings.
Which part is that?
It's SACP and the Transnet.
Oh, okay.
The legal teams are present.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we are ready to proceed with the evidence of Ms. Hogan.
Yes, Ms. Hogan, once again, thank you very much for taking the decision to come forward and assist the Commission in regard to what you know and what happened during your time as Minister of Public Enterprises. We appreciate it very much. We are investigating allegations, as you know, including allegations of state capture and certain aspects which are set out in our terms of reference. You will be asked questions, and if in the process you are asked questions that you might interpret as maybe are not so friendly, it will not be anything personal. It's simply because we approach the matter in terms of our reference on the basis that these are allegations. We have to get to the bottom of them. We have to go to find the truth. And so every witness who comes, if there are questions that need to be asked in order to understand his or her evidence properly and get to the bottom, those questions will be asked. But once again, thank you for coming forward. Thank you. Yes, the registrar will take an affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Barbara Ann Hogan.
Do you have any objection with making the prescribed affirmation?
No objection.
Do you truly affirm that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please state, I truly affirm.
I truly affirm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You
Hogan,
may proceed.
you had finished the commission with witness statements, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes, you can keep your mic on. Yes. The initial statement and the one which supplemented the initial statement, is that correct?
That's correct.
They appear on Exhibit L. Just for reference sake, you don't have to go there. Page 1 to 24. And the initial statement appears from page 393 to page 399. Do you confirm those statements under oath?
I confirm them.
Yes. Can you please, Ms. Hogan, proceed to sketch for us a brief synopsis of your personal history?
Okay. Chair, I had the distinction of being born in Benoni. and I grew up there, and I was lucky enough to go to university. I went to the University of Witwatersrand, and I completed a BA Honours in Development Studies.
Just 1 second, Ms. Hogan. Is her voice audible enough for everybody? Okay, I think they must do something to make sure everybody can hear. Just 1 second, they will try and sort something out.
Is that better?
It looks like that's much better. Can you now hear? Just say something again, Ms. Hogan.
I was born in Benoni. Many more other famous people were born in Benoni, but I claim that right as well. I went to university at Wits and did my honours degree there in development studies. It was at Wits that I first started to become politically conscientized. I arrived there in 1970, which was really the heyday of apartheid, the great heyday. And over time, I developed a great misgiving about apartheid and what it was doing to the people of this country. I became involved in the startup of what later emerged as the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU. It was a legal advice office. I was involved in that, and I was involved in student politics, and later on, I was involved in support work for workers' struggles such as consumer boycotts, etc. In 1977, I joined the ANC underground. Not the military underground, but the political underground. My reason was that I believed that the apartheid government, particularly after the death of Steve Biko and the banning of the Black consciousness organizations, that they had so much power that unless there was an organization that was outside of the country which could continue the struggle, we would not be able to break the back of that power. I also firmly believed in the non-racial stance of the ANC. In my university years, I had to engage with the issues of the Black consciousness movement, which was a predominant movement at that time. And whilst I understood, and still do, sympathize with a lot of the positions they took, I felt that the ANC, with its non-racial position, provided a future for South Africa. So I joined the ANC underground as a political operative. I registered for a master's in unemployment in South Africa, and I was a full-time student then. And in 1981, I was arrested by the security police. Along with me, it was a wide-scale raid on people. It was said that it was probably the first time in a long time that a broad range of people who had been arrested, who covered the entire spectrum of South African society, whites, Indians, coloreds, black. We were sort of seen as the emergence of a non-racial tradition that was now coming forward. I was initially charged with 5 other people, and then charges were later withdrawn against 3. 1 managed to slip the country, and 1 was found not guilty. I then stood trial on charges of high treason. I was found guilty of high treason by the court, although the judge had said there was nothing absolutely illegal that I had done, but I was party to a conspiracy to overthrow the state because I was a member of the ANC. So I was then sentenced to 14 years, 4 to run parallel. And I then went to jail. This whole process, I was in detention for 6 months, and then awaiting trial, and finally sentenced 7 months thereafter. So in late 1982, I was sentenced to prison. I was the only white woman prisoner, and I was not allowed to be with other prisoners. So I was on my own. After that, I was joined by 1 or 2, 3, 4 people at a time. And after 8.5 years of my time in prison, President de Klerk announced the unbanning of the ANC on February the 2nd. I was privileged enough to be released from prison 1.5 years ahead of my release date on parole, and I was released 2 days before President Mandela was released. I wanted time out. It had been a long, hard time, but the ANC had just been unbanned. It was still in exile. There were no structures in the country that were ANC, so Walter Sisulu, who headed the interim leadership corps of the ANC at that stage, requested that I sit on an interim leadership committee of the ANC in Gauteng, and our task was to build the branches and the structures of the ANC. If we were going to be negotiations, it had to be on a democratic basis, and we needed a party. I became the General Secretary of the ANC in Gauteng, and I was there for a period of 3 years. It was a terrible period, as you would recall, when people were being massacred left, right, and center. It was one of the worst periods, and it was a very difficult time to persuade people to believe in a future when they themselves were being massacred. We participated as a province very much in the policy considerations and the negotiations around Cadesa. And in 1994, after the elections, in 1994, I was put forward as a candidate as a member of parliament, and in 1994, I assumed my position as a member of parliament of the ANC, on the national list, not the provincial list. In Parliament, I served in various capacities. I was chair of the Parliamentary Budget Committee. I chaired the Finance Committee, the Parliamentary Committee on Finance. When I was in prison, I was not allowed to continue with my master's, and I was only allowed to do a BCom degree, which turned out to be very useful because in a new country, a newly emerging democracy, economic and accounting skills were very important. So I chaired the Finance Committee. We passed the Public Finance Management Act, the Municipal Finance Management Act. We set in process the procedures to reform the South African Revenue Services, which had completely collapsed during the apartheid years. I later served as the chair of the Standing Committee of the Auditor General, The Auditor General's, I had a very close working relationship with the Auditor General, and through our efforts, we were able to establish public accounts committees throughout all the provinces and later in the municipalities. And they still survive as one of the greatest, the best committees for accountability. In 2008, shortly before the 2009 elections, shortly after President Mbeki was removed or resigned from office, President Motlanthe asked me to be the Minister of Health. I am not a health expert, but I was strongly committed to making sure that people who had HIV and AIDS and tuberculosis receive the proper medication in order to survive. And I saw that as my challenge. And fortunately, during that period of time, we were able to start the process for unleashing a proper regime of care for people with HIV and AIDS. In 2000, that was 2008. In 2009, there were the elections, and President Zuma appointed me as the Minister of Public Enterprises. And I served in that capacity until he removed me about 18 months later at the end of 2010.
Who was your deputy? Who was your deputy at the time?
My deputy was Enoch Godongwana, who was head of the ANC's Economic Transformation Committee.
So as a Minister of Public Enterprise, now I'm taking from the period May 2009, flowing from your evidence, how many SOEs fell under your department? And you may also mention them, please.
Yes. There were 9 SOEs. The Department of Public Enterprises doesn't cover all SOEs, but there were extremely important ones. There was Eskom, Transnet, it's in paragraph 10 on page 4, Eskom, Transnet, SAA, SA Express, Denel, Infraco, PBMR, Alexcor, and Safco. They were entrusted to my care.
Yes. Now, during your time as a Minister of Public Enterprise, you also obtained 2 opinions. The one was from Wim Tringroff and the one from Michael Katz. May I refer you to, just to identify them, Annexure D, page 53. The one runs from Annexure D, Mr. Chair, page 53 to 82, and the other one runs from page 83 to 93 of Annexure D. Are you there, Ms. Hogan?
Yes, I have them.
Are those?
Did you say page 53?
Page 53, Mr. Chair.
And that's F1, Exhibit LF, File 1?
Exhibit F1, File 1.
Well, what I have at 5.3 is on the letterheads of public enterprises, and I didn't expect Council's opinion to be on the letterheads of...
Mr. Chair, let me just recheck the numbering. I might have given you... Yeah. Page 83, Mr. Chair.
83.
Kevin. Yeah. The one of Mr. Wim Tringroff is from page 83.
Mr. Katz is 68, I think.
Yes.
Yes, I've got it at page 83. Have you got it, Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are those the opinions that you received?
Yes, I've got them.
Would I be correct that those opinions dealt with the appointments and removals of the SOEs and also addressed the powers and functions of the Minister of Public Enterprises with reference to the applicable legal instruments?
Correct.
And do you agree?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mokoena. The other opinion is that of Mr. Katz, you said.
Yes.
Katz, I didn't hear where you said that is to be found.
668. And he signs at page 82.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Hogan. And do you agree with the conclusions arrived at in those opinions?
Yes, I do.
Now, may you please, in your own words, and flowing from your understanding, from your experience as the Minister of Public Enterprise, take us through the structure of ownership and control of the SOEs.
Okay. There was a period in time before the ANC government came into power when SOEs like Eskom, Transnet, and whatever were not companies as such, but government agencies. And over the period of time in the late 80s, early 90s, and whatever, that status was changed. So they then became public utilities and became a company and fell under the Companies Act. And in terms of the Companies Act, both the one that prevailed at the time when I became minister and the Companies Act, which then followed on shortly thereafter, the minister, in most cases of all of these 9 SOEs, is the single shareholder. Now, the minister is the shareholder and performs her functions as a shareholder on behalf of government. That is the executive authority assigned to a Minister of Public Enterprise, which is to exercise her authority as the shareholder. Now, as we all know, the shareholder does not run a company, nor does the shareholder interfere in the management of a company. The shareholder has certain prescribed rights conferred on it both by the Public Finance Management Act, by the Companies Act, codes of conduct by the King Report. And the shareholders, one of its most important tasks of the shareholder is to appoint directors at an annual general meeting of the board. And the shareholder can also remove a director under certain conditions. As a minister, you have to keep very close watch what is happening in each of these companies. And particularly when I refer to companies like Eskom, Transnet, SAA, who have a vast asset base, and Transnet and Eskom are essential for the running of the country, for the economy. If Transnet doesn't work, none of us work. So there's even a greater need for the minister to be very close to what is happening, but not to interfere. There is a handbook that government gives, that government issued and which Cabinet adopted in 2008, which prescribes in very clear terms, and I'm sure the Commission would be very interested, it prescribes how the minister should go about appointing. And it's a very, very careful process, because you want to have the best people and the most knowledgeable people to run this company. So then let us go to the directors. The directors have a fiduciary responsibility to the company, not to me as a minister, but to the company. They have to make sure that everything that is done there is for the good of the company. In order to do so, they appoint a manager or a series of senior managers. Often the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and the CEO are the most important appointments. In many of these SOEs, the memorandums of association, as they were called then, prescribe that the minister appoint the CEO, as in Transnet, for instance. But under these circumstances, no minister would just go ahead and appoint a CEO, because that CEO then has to enter into a formal employment contract with the board and is accountable to the board for their performance. If there is no trust or no endorsement of that CEO by the board, it's a very difficult relationship.
Ms. Hogan, while you are still there testifying on the structure and the state as the shareholder, may I, for completeness, also refer you to page 84, Mr. Chair, that is part of Mr. Tringrove's opinion, page 84, with particular reference to paragraph 4, and that theme runs up until page 87, paragraph 8.4. Would that also equate to what you have been testifying to the chair in as far as the state as the shareholder and the responsibilities of the board as well as the CEO?
That's correct. Do you want me just to elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, you mean, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
So the minister's executive authority as a shareholder, one of its important roles is to appoint the board and to allow the board to do the initial work around the appointment of a CEO in agreement. So you would agree, this is what the shareholder, this is what competencies we want, this is the kind of person we're looking for, and keep very close to the process. And the board would consult backwards and forwards and say, we've done the interviews, and from our opinion, we would like to recommend so-and-so or whatever, and then the minister would make a decision and then take it to cabinet. Now, it is very important that the minister does not interfere with the work of the CEO, or that the CEO does not believe that he or she can jump the directors, go past them, and go straight to the executive authority. Corporate governance is very important in this phase. And if there's any dilution of that, it leads to the company starting to disintegrate because no one knows where the real authority emerges and the notion of a shadow state comes up.
You've just referred to an important concept of corporate governance.
Yes.
Can we dissect that in order for us to place it in its proper context?
Sorry,
now,
I didn't.
To place it in its proper context, who runs the day-to-day operations of the SOE?
The management, and the CEO is a central person in that.
And to whom are they accountable to?
The board.
And what is the role of the board in relation to the SOEs?
The board owes the company a fiduciary responsibility. So the board provides a strategic direction and vision. Obviously, in a relationship with the senior managers, in consultation, but the board must provide that strategic direction and must hold the management to account.
Yes. And from your own experience and perspective, what is a focus of a major SOE such as Eskom and Transnet?
Well, Eskom is responsible for providing energy to this entire country. There are very few. When I came in as a minister, I think Eskom was responsible for 97% of the energy generation, and I think we've all experienced during the blackouts what the consequences are if Eskom is not performing.
Yes. Now,
And Transnet, let me just.
Yes.
Transnet.
So maybe you shouldn't talk about blackouts. Yes, thank you. You may proceed. You may proceed.
Eskom follows me like a ghost for the rest of my life.
Ms. Hogan, a warning from the chair, please don't talk about the blackouts because we are going to experience some.
I will undertake to do so.
You were just about to explain about Transnet.
Transnet doesn't deal with passenger rail. Transnet only deals with the movements of manufactured goods or chemicals across the country. If you look at the moment at the trucks that carry coal, it's just two holders, containers. If you look at a Transnet train, it can go on for nearly a kilometer, the length. So obviously, having an efficient rail infrastructure with an efficiently run